This is 11th grade honors literature, and we're taking some notes today on the Romantic poets. I'm going to put this up. If you can see it, I'll post the notes. But we just took some notes about Coleridge and Byron, and I'll put the PowerPoint up so you can get it at home. Let me change the screen. What we're saying about Coleridge, he was the friend of Wordsworth. He was a critic, literary critic. He liked to write things that are kind of fantasy or horror. George Gordon, known as Lord Byron, he was the best known of all the poets, and he died in the country of Greece fighting for their War of Independence. And so the last two are Shelley and Keats. I don't even see that. I don't know why it's not showing. The last two are Shelley and Keats. Again, I'll have to post this so you can't see it very well. Shelley died young. Byron died relatively young, 36. And John Keats died very young, he was 26. So these last three poets were the younger crowd, and they didn't live very long. Shelley was the perfect romantic. He was known for his pursuit of truth, his learning, his scope and variety of his work. He wrote a poem called Adonis about his friend Keats. And not so admirable about him, he left his first wife. Actually, he didn't divorce her before he married Mary Wollstone Godwin, become known as Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein. He married her, as I understand it, before he divorced the other woman. So, and he died young. How old was he? 22 and 8. So he's just 30 years old. Died in a boating accident, which Mary Shelley kind of recreates that in Frankenstein. There's a scene in Frankenstein about that takes place on a boat in a lake. And then the last one and the youngest one is John Keats, maybe the best one, although Wordsworth is considered the best. John Keats died at age 26. Was considered possibly the next great Shakespeare, but he didn't live long enough to be able to experience that. He wrote some poems we will read, particularly To Autumn here and Ode on the Grecian Earth. He liked to write odes. Odes are long, serious poems about a particular topic, and he liked to write sonnets. So sonnets and odes, they're easier to read because they're shorter. So that's John Keats. So there will be a, a test when we finish the Romantic poets. It's going to be a little while, but we'll have a test before we start reading Frankenstein. We're going to actually begin studying poetry about in 15 minutes. No, we have till 11:30 today. Today, what day is this? Yeah, 11:30 to 12:20 is today. All right, so have y'all finished with this?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to turn the light back on.
Different dates? Oh, because I lost this one on Monday, so I grabbed this one. So the same thing. Just in case I lose one.
Okay. It picks it up when it's the light's on. It didn't pick it up when the light was on.
I'm really trying to do something for us. I'm very proud of us, to be honest. Would you like to see?
So we're going to shift gears. And do together a poem called Jerusalem. And we're starting with this for several reasons. Main reason is he's the first poet on the list. He's the young, or the oldest, who was born the soonest. It's called Jerusalem by William Blake. And I will read it to you, and then we have some questions. You do have questions, yeah. We're going to have questions we'll go through to understand it. So this poem is a good introduction to Romantic poetry. Let me read it. And did these feet, or those feet, in ancient time walk upon England's mountain green? And was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen? And did the countenance divine shine forth upon our clouded hills? And was Jerusalem builded here, among these dark satanic mills? Bring me my bow of burning gold, bring me my arrows of desire, bring me my spear, O clouds unfold, bring me my chariot of fire. I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. Okay, the first rule about reading poetry is to read it twice. So I'm going to ask you to read it again. This time, without looking at the questions or anything, circle anything that you notice about it, like anything you think is important. Jot down an idea that the poem gives you. I'll give you another few minutes to read it. Okay, there are some questions that go with this, and so basically these questions are based on all questions. You could ask these questions for any poem you ever read. And so I'm going to give you a list later of about 10 questions that you could ask any poem. That's useful because teachers will not always give you questions that'll help you read through it. So let's go through the questions. It's called Jerusalem. It actually has two names. Another name that it has is by the first line, and did these feet in ancient time, just for your benefit. Who is speaking? Now, this is a question you have to ask of any poet. I didn't ask who wrote the poem. We know who wrote the poem. It's William Blake. But who is speaking? Is it somebody that's maybe different from William Blake, or does it sound like it's actually the poet who's speaking? What do you think? You have really two choices. Is it somebody other than... Clearly, Mark Twain is not Huck Finn, right? Huck Finn's a 14-year-old boy. Mark Twain is not a 14-year-old boy. So Huck Finn is speaking, but it's not the author who's speaking. It's a creation of the author. Do you think that's the case here, or does this sound like it could be from William? You know a little bit about William Blake now. He's the one that was interested in social justice and kind of a visionary, seemed to be interested in religion, Christianity. You have any idea? I think that's a good answer. I think sometimes that's the only answer. It's the poet speaking. All right. What do we know about him? As we read the poet, what does he care about? What are his concerns? What kind of person is he based on the poet? Well, what seems to be something he talks about a lot, like a type of category that he likes to talk about?
He talks about England's like the grain from England,
So
pastures.
he cares about his country, and he likes the nature part of it, right? That would kind of make sense, being a romantic poet, right? That's one of the characteristics. What else seems to be the other thing, at least one other thing that he seems interested in?
Weapons.
What?
Weapons. Weapons.
Weapons. Oh, okay, sorry. It's the mask. She said weapons, yes. What kind of weapons are they, though? Now, remember, look at the date. We're talking about the 1800s, mostly, late 1800s. What do you notice about those weapons?
Like really old ones.
They're old weapons. Yeah, they're not muskets or rifles or cannon. They're old weapons. That's a good point. I've really actually never thought of it that way.
He talks about Jerusalem.
Yeah, do you see other things related to the Bible that he mentions?
Lamb of God.
Yes, Lamb of God.
Like when he says, like countenance divine. Is that?
Right? That's a reference, divine, that's a reference to God. Satanic, that's, Satan's in the Bible, that's a part of, and at the end you mentioned Jerusalem. Do any of those weapons, now you said that they seem really old, do they seem like maybe even biblical weapons? Okay. So that's also, so we're figuring this is somebody that's probably a Christian, because the question is, describe him. He knows his Bible, and he cares about England. All right? Good. That's a good start. Secondly, who do you think he's talking to? And where in the poem is there a particular direct answer to that?
Like people from England?
Yes. Yeah, that's not unimportant. It seems like, well, duh, of course it's English people, not necessarily, but you're right. Where does he actually mention that?
He said till we have built Jerusalem.
Yes. Very good. It's those little things that really matter, particularly in a poem, because there's not that many words there. Very good. He's talking to English people. Again, all these questions you could answer to any poem. What is the occasion? In this case, what seems to be motivating the poem? Like, it's almost like, what is he writing about? But along with that, there seems to be a problem that he's addressing. So what does it seem like he's writing about? What causes him to write this poem?
He's having a mental fight.
Yeah, and with those weapons, he must be fighting against something. What do you think he's fighting? That's good. What is he fighting against? In what form? What seems to be, yeah, he mentioned Satan. He certainly, that is the enemy. But what is Satan doing? It's not a lot about it, but there's something there about it. What is Satan doing that bothers William Blake?
I'm kind of guessing, but is it like in society?
Yes, what aspect of society is Satan getting involved in? I mean, look at the sentence again. That's the only really clue, but there's a clue right there in that one line.
Mills,
What are mills?
like where they did the weeds. Well, like grain. It's like, right? It was
Right.
grain.
Okay,
Yeah.
mills.
You know what I meant to say.
Mills are factories, right? And so they usually produce things. Like you can produce grain from, well, you can produce flour from grain. What other kinds of mills are there? Like what other things are made in mills? And I know you haven't gotten started with Ms. Roberts much yet here, but again, noticing the date, noticing the mills,
Oh, like factories.
factories.
Factory.
What's the problem? Why would they be? What would be a satanic factory?
They were like torturing. I know they weren't torturing people, but
No?
it was like unjust.
Okay.
The factories.
Okay.
Like the treating of people.
With the way they work,
Yeah.
labor issues.
Yeah.
What else could have been problems with the mills besides just the mistreatment of people in the mills? How does the mill maybe affect people outside the mill? And notice it says these dark satanic mills. And you'll learn about this with her, the Industrial Revolution, but what makes them dark? Like literally dark, not just dark because it's satanic, but is there anything literally dark about the mills?
No light.
No light. That's not a bad answer. Why is there no light? Like what does the mill produce that causes there to be no light? And it says, our clouded hills.
Oh, fire. There's fire and smoke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what do we call
Yeah.
that when it's bad fire and bad
Pollution.
smoke? Pollution. So not only those are all good answers. You came up with that on your own. Not only is the workers are they mistreated, but the environment is mistreated. And if you've ever read any Dickens, there's a lot in Dickens about that. So good. So we're answering the question, what is the occasion? What is the setting and time of the poem? Notice, like now we can answer these other questions a little easier. I kind of gave it away. Look at the dates. What is the kind of the event here that he's referring to?
The Industrial Revolution.
Right. Has she started talking about that?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. It was perfect timing. So the Industrial Revolution. What seems to be the purpose of the poem? These are questions you could ask of any poet. At least the first part of the question. What seems to be the purpose? And is the poet advocating some change?
I guess he wants them to stop.
Yes. Where does he say that? How do you know he wants them to stop?
I will not cease from mental fight.
Right, that's the fight he's probably talking about, that Sarah, you mentioned. So he wants them to stop that. And so what do you think the purpose of the poem is?
To like tell other people to like rise up against
To
that.
encourage people to do just that, to put pressure on the mills and the factory owners. And so 6 is similar to 5. So now that you kind of figure out the purpose of it, what seems to be the, what would you say the main idea is? To sort of expand that a little bit, sort of in a sentence or so. What seems to be the main idea?
That like the factories and mills are bad for England, and they should
Yeah, very good. That's, and you gave me a sentence. That's a good sentence statement as to what the poem means. Let's go to number 7. So we've basically figured out the meaning, but we're not finished with the questions, and I think we'll have time. We have 6 minutes. Tell me one striking image in the poem. Images are words, phrases that appeal to sight, sound, smell, and touch. So is there one image, that's what we call images, is there one particular image that appealed to you?
Green and pleasant.
Yes, I like that too. What about Vera?
Like nor shall my sword sleep in my hand.
Good. What does that mean? What Isabella mentioned is pure imagery, green and pleasant. You can see it, you can take, but this is a little different. Where does it say that? Nor shall my, yes, sword sleep in my hand. Well, swords can't sleep, so what is he talking about?
Is it like his Bible?
Well, it could be, but when he says it, nor shall my sword, say it's the Bible, sleep in my hand, what does he mean?